Thank you all for coming today. I'm just pinch hitting here for my friend Senator Tomassoni, who's the chief author of the bill to appropriate $20 million to the University of Minnesota for ALS research. You know, it's a disease that was first diagnosed back in 1869, and it is not incurable. The problem has been there's so few people impacted by it, about 400 to 450 in Minnesota in any given year are living with the disease, that the resources just haven't been committed to it. So I do believe if we make an effort, this is a disease that we can cure. And my hope is that we're going to be successful at the legislature this year with Senator Tomassoni leading the charge. And we're going to hear from the University of Minnesota today. The bill is getting a hearing in the Senate next week. So we're off and running. So with that, Senator Tomassoni's son Dante wants to say a few words on behalf of the bill author, his dad, David Tomassoni.
Thank you, Tom. This is my dad's statement, his written word. He did this himself, so I'm speaking for him. Lou Gehrig died on June 2nd, 1939. Incidentally, my father died on June 2nd, and I was diagnosed on June 2nd. Since Lou Gehrig's disease, more than 80 years have passed with little to no progress to finding a cure for this horrible disease. It's high time we make a huge investment in research and development to eradicate ALS. These two bills give us a fighting chance. The first bill invests in research, caregiver assistance, and funding ALS clinics. The second bill is research only. Either way, we need to make a significant strides in the fight against ALS. I look forward to working with my legislative colleagues and the governor to get these bills over the finish line. I want to thank everyone for their support and their efforts, and I look forward to passing this legislation early on in this legislative session. Thank you. Representative Lizagard, I believe, is up next.
Thank you all for being here today, but I just want to be honest and upfront. I knew very little about ALS, the Lou Gehrig disease, and I knew that they had blasts and they had fundraisers, but I had no idea about the impact that it has on individuals or their families. And so when Senator Tomassoni asked me in his office if I would carry this bill, I took it with great honor and great pride for my dear friend. There's a lot that we can do, but we just have to make the effort come together, both Democrat, Republican, and the governor, and get this over the finish line, because we can impact people's lives in a positive way. And this disease is extremely personal, actually, right? So we carry a lot of legislation that you know, it's meaningful, but when this one hits so close to home, it just reaches a different level. But I want you to know that, you know, although his body is deteriorating a little bit, it's still David. My wife and I were over at his house Super Bowl Sunday. We stopped over there. And my wife was across the table. David was sitting there. And David looks at my wife and he says, "You know why I can't talk?" And she didn't know what to say. She says, "No." He says, "Because I'm Italian, I can't move my hands." So, I mean, the disease is real, and I think that we have a wonderful opportunity to come together and get this over the finish line, and I just love you, my dear friend, and we're going to do this for you.
Hi, I'm Senator Karen Housley. Senator Tomassoni has been a great friend and colleague to myself and to the legislators in St. Paul. And though this diagnosis has been heartbreaking, it's truly been inspiring to watch him lead the effort on these important bills, and it's truly an honor to stand by my friend's side and present this much-needed legislation. We need to invest in this critical research so that we can make progress towards finding a cure for ALS. We can help improve the lives of those affected by the disease, and we can give them and their families hope. Just a couple of facts about ALS. It's a progressive neurodegenerative disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, and it ultimately robs people of their ability to walk, talk, and eventually breathe. At any given time in Minnesota, approximately 400 people are living with ALS. 2 people are diagnosed every single week, and 2 people die every week in Minnesota of ALS. The average life expectancy of those diagnosed with ALS is 2 to 5 years. 90% of those diagnosed have no known reasons. Veterans are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with ALS than anyone else. Our bill, Senate File 3310, has 3 parts to it. $10 million will be going to annually for services grants to support, improve, and expand the treatment of ALS. You will hear from some of the families here today how hard it is to get support when you're going through ALS and the treatments. These clinic supports make no money. They rely on philanthropists for their funding, and every single year they are losing money. Another $10 million annually will go towards research. Since Lou Gehrig was diagnosed 83 years ago, we really haven't made that much progress when it comes to research because there's no funding. So $10 million annually will be going for research in ALS. And then another $5 million will be going to helping caregivers. You will also hear caregivers end up being the main support for those. They spend more than 30 hours a week caring for their loved ones, and over half of them felt unprepared and continue to be unprepared when it's taking care of their loved one. 52% of them cite that they're really worried about their future. So again, we'll hear some horrific stories. It's a horrible disease, and we're doing this for Senator Tomassoni and for ALS Research. And I want to thank you for being here and bringing this forth for all of us. Thank you. I think we've got Representative New.
Thank you, Karen. I'm Representative Ann New Brindley, and I am sort of serving double duty today. I'm here as both a legislator and a widow of a man who died with ALS. This bill is here at this time because, sadly, the issue, we use the term ripe sometimes, and this issue is ripe right now because of our friend David. And that's why we're here, and that's why this bill has a shot at getting over the finish line this year. I just want to talk briefly about the different components of this and why they are so important from a personal perspective. First of all, the research grant program. Families need hope. Right now, when someone is diagnosed with ALS, you know the end from the beginning. We need hope for these families. I brought a picture of my family about a year after my husband was diagnosed, and you'll notice that my kids are pretty tiny. And this youngest was 5 years old when her dad was diagnosed, and we had to explain to her what was going to happen over the next few years. That needs to change. We need this money in research. I also want to talk for just a moment about the ALS service grants that are going to the ALS Association. I want to tell you what this organization does because they do phenomenal things, and they take care of families in a way that families don't know that they need. For example, when we would go to our ALS appointments every few months, and they became more frequent, new things would be happening all the time. This is a fast progressing disease, as I'm sure David is experiencing. And one month we would show up and John wasn't able to tie his shoes anymore. And they sent us home with stretchy shoelaces so that he didn't have to untie and tie his shoes anymore. Another month we showed up and John was having a hard time getting up from the couch. That had become very difficult. 2 days later, there was an electric lift chair in our living room on loan from the ALS Association. The kind of service they provide to families is immeasurable. The things we don't know we need, they know we need. And lastly, on caregiver support, and this has been addressed a little bit, but folks do not understand until you're in the situation the very high level of care that is required when you are caring for a loved one with ALS. It's everything. My late husband happened to choose to be on a ventilator, which takes certainly a high level of care. But even prior to that, it's things you don't know about and don't think about, like suctioning saliva and all these silly little things, to higher level needs like helping shower and get in and out of bed and get dressed. Every need. This is affective paralysis. Every itch that needs to be scratched needs to be done by a caregiver. And so this caregiver support is so incredibly important to support these families who are caring for their loved ones. And we all know that having our loved ones home is certainly the best situation for our loved ones, and it's also the best situation for our families. So every aspect of this bill is critical and important and hits a different need. So thank you, David. And Dr. David Walk, I believe, is next.
Thank you. David Walk, I'm a neurologist at University of Minnesota and run our ALS Center. ALS is a devastating illness, and the need for better treatments is immediate. While in the fight of his life, Senator Tomassoni has chosen to devote precious time to help all Minnesotans in this struggle. I've been asked to speak about the impact of this legislation on ALS research. This legislation can be transformational. We believe the cures must come from knowing the cellular biology of a disease. In recent years, several cellular problems have been identified that may be treatable root causes of ALS and other neurologic diseases. The substantial research funding in these bills will galvanize the extensive resources of a major public research university to accelerate this progress. These funds will create a Center for ALS Research and Care that will bring leading scientific minds to the fight against ALS. The University of Minnesota is a national research leader in muscular dystrophy, ataxia, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's disease, a leader in stem cell technology and imaging and drug development. The collaboration of these individuals with leading scientists in ALS in the Biomedical Discovery District will facilitate advances within and beyond ALS. Scientific discoveries will lead to more clinical trials designed to determine which interventions work best for ALS. With the help of people living with ALS and their families, with the help of providers statewide, we hope to facilitate access to clinical trials to as many interested Minnesotans as possible, regardless of their background, circumstances, or geographic location. The Health Discovery Hub will help in this effort. Finally, it remains important to expand research in and access to electronic aids and other interventions that remove barriers in daily life for people living with ALS and other physical challenges. Working alongside established programs of clinical research and care, and with the courageous partnership of people living with ALS and their families, like Senator Tomassoni and his, the twin goals will be to help unlock the biology of this disease and to design treatments that will improve and extend the lives of people living with ALS in Minnesota and throughout the world. Senator Tomassoni is also called to fund clinical care and home care for people living with ALS. Clinical care with ALS is complex, multidimensional, and costly. This challenging disease affects communication, lung function, nutritional status, self-care, mobility, cognition, and behavior, and usually several of these in one individual. And for people living with all conditions that affect their independence, one of the painful ironies of our healthcare system is that it is often easier to find and easier to fund caregiving in a facility than in a home. This legislation will help Minnesota families whose days and nights are consumed by caregiving rather than sharing precious time in loving support and reflection. I want to add that we learned that hundreds of Minnesotans are living with ALS every day, but sadly, because this disease moves so quickly, every year thousands, or every few years thousands, live with ALS, impacting tens of thousands in their families and loved ones. Today, we share our gratitude and honor Senator Tomassoni for his service to the people of the Iron Range and to all Minnesotans. Thank you. Chris Engler.
My wife Kara and I are honored to be here today. Forgive me, to celebrate this bipartisan bill that will provide $20 million to research, add more ALS clinical care, and help caregivers to care for and treat ALS patients, to ultimately end the scourge known as ALS. I too have this disease. Senator Tomassoni and I have become friends as we battle it. It has been an honor. He's such a great person. In typical Senator Tomassoni fashion, this bill will help others who develop the disease in the future, not those of us such as the senator who suffer now. Thus, the senator did not propose this bill to help himself, but rather others. Forward thinking to help Minnesotans is so consistent with who he is. Thank you to Senator Tomassoni and all of the other legislators who were proponents and will be yes votes for this important legislation. Senator Tomassoni and I would like to thank the healthcare professionals, both doctors and nurses, that we have encountered. Senator Tomassoni's neurologist, Dr. Amber Erickson of Essentia Health, my neurologist, Dr. Gaurav Guliani, Health Partners, and Dr. Nathan Staff of the Mayo Clinic. Also, our nurse professionals who, along with our family members, are so caring and helpful and make our journey easier. To the researchers who will use part of the funding of this bill, thank you as well. The difference between care and cure is you. As you research, may you remember the main driver behind what allows you to do your important work. Senator David Tomassoni and the legislators backing this legislation. I thank you. Kent.
These guys up here. Hello, my name's David Colquist. I'm the president of Never Surrender, a volunteer. Along with me, two-time World Series champ. Everybody knows him in the room. Kent Herbeck, 1989 World Series champ with the Oakland Athletics. Terry Steinbach, the pride of New Ulm, Minnesota. These guys, as good as they were on the baseball field, and obviously they're very good, they've even been better the last 30 years, working to find a cure and help ALS around the state. See, for Kent and Terry, it was their father. For me, it was my brother. As we battled this, we've often talked, we haven't gained enough progress over these 30 years, and Kent basically started the chapter by 40 years ago. We heard about Lou Gehrig's speech in 1939, 83 years ago, and in that time, there's only 4 FDA-approved drugs. It's just not enough. So why this bill is so important is the timing of the bill. For the first time ever in the last year, we've developed an ALS Platform Trial. What this does, it cuts the time in half to see if a drug works, cuts the cost in a third, and brings up the participation by 67%. We've worked very hard the last year getting these platforms. We have them in Rochester, we have them in Minneapolis, and last week we got one going in Duluth, Minnesota. So every ALS patient in the state of Minnesota is going to have access to the latest and greatest in therapies and trials for ALS. I often get asked, can we stop or can we cure ALS? The answer is yes, we can. We just haven't invested enough to do it. This bill is a game changer, changes the landscape of ALS, and will make a difference throughout our country. So I certainly thank Senator Tomassoni for being here, having the courage to drive up. That wasn't easy to do, but he's here today fighting and will keep fighting as we all have. It's been drastically underfunded for many years, and now we have a chance to make it right. Thank you. Ken.
Thank you, David. Yeah, for 40 years, I've had the opportunity to know what ALS is. My father passed away in 1982, which is 40 years ago. Being a baseball player, I definitely knew who Lou Gehrig was. I studied about the disease when I found out my father had it. I unfortunately got to play first base. My first big league baseball game was Yankee Stadium, where Lou Gehrig played first base. So believe me, I know what ALS is all about. And to hear about Senator Tomassoni's bill to get passed here, hopefully we can do that, is a huge game changer for not us, but everybody involved with ALS. I want to thank Senator and Chris as well for coming out today and being a huge part of this. And I'm here to lend all the support I can because I think I know it's a huge deal. So thank you. Terry?
Thank you, Kent. Similar to what Kent's saying, in 1999, I went through the same situation. My dad was diagnosed in 98, and I saw what ALS was doing. Didn't really know what it was. Talked to our team doctors out in Oakland, talked to our specialists from San Francisco Children's Hospital out there, and they kind of gave me what to expect. And in 99, was playing the season and got the phone call that my dad had passed. And we think, as athletes, you're on the field, you got everything. But it's probably one of the hardest things that I had to do. So to be working for 23 years, earning money, trying to find a cure, trying to find progress for this disease, was tough. Senator, when we see the bill that you introduced and we see that potential money that can go out there to help the victims, to help the families, and just as importantly, hopefully find a cure, we thank you. I personally thank you. Our legislators down there, thank you for everything you're doing, and let's see if we can get this thing passed. I mean, nothing would be more, and I'm going to steal Herbie's line. He says this all the time, that he's got the okay from Dave St. Peter, that when we find a cure for this disease, we got all at Target Field rented out, and we'll have a farewell party for ALS. Thank you.
My name is Jules Nigerian. I'm also a widow to ALS. I was asked to come and provide you with our personal story of our experience. And these are my 3 children who experienced it all as well. When I first met Paul, I would say that is where our story began. He was unique and special. He had goodness and kindness exuding from him. He had a voice that was so distinct and you could feel all these qualities directly through his voice. He treated people equally and with such kindness, and he was notably strong. He grew up with the benefit of having 3 brothers, and he played linebacker for Cal Berkeley as his father did before him. It had given him a build like a Greek god, and I had the great fortune for a short time to call him my husband and father of my 3. In 2002, one of my most favorite days, I married this man, and only a few years later, we noticed that Paul's very distinguished voice had changed a bit, and he had noticed he'd lost his whistle. This then began our journey. It started with a regular physician who referred us to an ENT, who then passed us off to a neurologist. It was at the U of M on St. Patrick's Day in 2011 that we met the man who would deliver our most unfortunate news. The loss of a whistle had brought us a death sentence. Paul was diagnosed with bulbar presentation ALS. This meant that instead of losing control of his body, bottom up or legs first, he would lose control of his motor neurons top down. His speech and use of his tongue were the first to go. This form of ALS is most aggressive, and we were given 2 years until death do us part would come to fruition. We left that neurologist's office crippled for certain and with little understanding of the mountain that we had before us. But we had God-given hope and the confidence in our medical community. It helped that Paul's father was a well-known physician. We certainly would have access to the best medicine could provide. Paul underwent every test imaginable, and we had continual blood tests to try to help in research. We sought after alternative therapies, anything to alter the path that we were on, anything to show a resemblance of a win instead of the reality that ALS is a long, slow defeat. As our battle intensified, Paul's speech worsened, his lower lip sunk in, giving him a constant aching ulcer. His swallowing was difficult, and he would choke on his own saliva. Eventually, normal eating and drinking were impossible, and he ended up getting a feeding tube. Paul would say, in his new gravelly, harsh, difficult voice, that every moment he was fatigued beyond imaginable and feeling nauseous from the new liquid diet. All day and night, he would have muscle tremors that he likened to insects crawling under his skin. Eventually, the spasms would fade away along with his muscles. Our days were filled with timed medication, feeding through his tube, a multitude of doctor visits. I learned that these visits were not offensive meetings to attack this disease. They were, at best, a reactionary defense. Paul would say that as soon as he could accept the loss of one of his functions of his body, ALS would deprive him of something new. It was constant adjusting. He did well in recognizing we had no choice to march forward in what our lives were. We did our best to have a normal life with our children. Paul would still get on his knees every night and thank God, as he would say, for what he did have. As time went on, we moved to a one-level living home. It was our only offensive move in our battle. Paul, at this juncture, was what they call air hungry. He described it as though he did not have enough air, but he did not have enough strength to take a breath. All great reasons for a trach tube. This was, from the beginning, an action Paul said he would never do. His hunger was so intense, however, that he did sign up. It was our last defense in our losing stretch. ALS gave us the final blow in our home, surrounded by our children, Paul's parents, less than a week later on our son's half-birthday, June 23rd, 2014. Paul fought the good fight in every sense of that statement, and we are actually pleased that he is at peace. We tried to follow very closely the example he set and look at what we were given with that great man and not at what ALS took from us. This is a picture when Paul was diagnosed about a month afterwards. Thank you, and thank you for your support of this bill. That we can open up questions.
Doctor, question. Are there genetic markers and is there an opportunity to get advance notice?
Doctor, do you mind answering it by the way? Sure. Thank you. Streaming it.
So the question was, are there genetic markers and is there an opportunity to get advance notice? And actually, I'm glad you asked that, not to get too much into the weeds, but 10% of people who develop ALS have a recognized genetic marker, if you want to call it that. And I think that's important for this reason. First of all, there are gene-specific therapies being developed for those individuals. And second of all, we're approaching the time when some of those therapies may be successful for people with those genetic forms. And the moment that happens, it will be important for people who may be at risk because of a family member with that or one of those genes that have a treatment to know, because we are also approaching a time when we may be able to identify with a blood marker a year or two before the first symptom in people with genetic forms that their disease is beginning. And so our hope is that for those with genetic forms of ALS, we may be nearing the point where we can monitor people regularly, just like you get a mammogram or a colonoscopy or a PSA. And those individuals who we know have that genetic form, we can identify that the disease is coming before it starts and institute a treatment designed specifically for their genetic form. So this is an opportunity to kind of share that information. We're not quite there yet, but there is one clinical trial now designed to do exactly that in a rare form of genetic ALS.
Just as a follow-up, what would the percentage of people with genetic markers be in the overall population?
So it is about 10% total. Of course, as we learn about more genes, we learn more, but I don't think it's going to rise a whole lot higher. But these genes have also taught us a lot about what's happening biologically in ALS for everybody who suffers from this.
You have bipartisan, bicameral support here. How quickly could this get through the Capitol, and perhaps for the doctor, how soon could some of these grants start going out the door?
Jeremy.
Everyone's looking at me.
The good news is the majority leader is one of the authors of the bill.
Yeah, speaker.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I can't answer the medical question of how soon that money can be put to use, but what I can say is I feel there'll be strong bipartisan support in the Senate to get this done quickly. Not only for my good friend and my colleague, Senator Tomassoni, but for all the other individuals and families that are struggling with ALS. This is something that we need to get done, and I'm confident that we can get it done, and we'll have bipartisan support to get it done in the Senate.
I'll just, I don't want to speak for Speaker Hortman, but when I brought this bill and David asked me to carry it, Speaker Hortman asked to be number 2 on the bill. So that speaks volumes going through the process when you have the speaker that is committed to it. He said it should have been done last week.
I've got a question from Brian Bax, who's watching on the live stream. He wants to know if the totals in the 2 bills are $45 million toward research and caregiving, or is there overlap in the proposals? So if one of the authors could respond. And you will have to go to the microphone so we can hear you.
Yeah, it's to Brian Bax. It's for research and caregiving. So it's $10 million for the grant support for clinic support and expanding the treatment of ALS. $10 million for research grants. Each of those are annually, and then $5 million support for the caregivers annually.
Your bill's another 20. Don't think we have any more questions. Are there any final comments?
Well, I should say, Senator Tomassoni's bill that I'm carrying is $20 million for the University of Minnesota, specifically for research. And I talked with people with the university today. We crafted the bill in the Senate internally with our Senate attorneys. And so the university already today reached out to me and said they think they've got some ways to tweak the language to make sure that we can deploy it better. There are currently 6 clinics around Minnesota that are doing ALS research. We want to make sure that we enhance that and use that money in as powerful a way as we can. So I can't say that it all will end up at the university. There may be grants to other ALS clinics that are doing research.
While you're up there, Senator Brock, Mary Lahammer with TPT asked, what does this bill mean to you personally in honor of your longtime friend and colleague?
Well, it's his #1 priority, so it's become mine.
Beyond legislation, is there a place where people can donate to the ALS funds? Does anybody have that information?
We actually have someone from ALS here.
Yeah, we do. We do, but there are, the group up in Hermantown, Never Surrender, that you heard from earlier, Dave. We spent some money on envelopes. We're going to have an event here tonight, a tribute to Senator Tomassoni. We ordered up plenty of envelopes. Everybody's going to have a chance to get one. And I would just love to see all the Capitol family. And you're going to learn tonight, if you're here, the people that work around the Capitol, it's about way more than just the members of the legislature. It really is a family of people that work around the Capitol complex. And this disease now has affected one of our own. And just like in your family, when something happens to someone in your family, people come out big time. So I think people will come out tonight in huge numbers. I expect 500 people here tonight in a tribute to Senator Tomassoni. And I'm going to ask every one of them, if you want something in the bonding bill, you probably should have that envelope in the box.
We do have a representative from the ALS.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Would you mind giving us your name as well?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Mary Ann Kewen. I'm the Vice President of Care Services at the ALS Association here in Minnesota. And we work very closely with Never Surrender, and we do provide a lot of these programs and services to people that are affected by ALS. We certainly have walks and events throughout the year that you can donate to. You can go to alsa.org and get access to our website as well. But we work in partnership, and we're very thankful to everybody here for the work that you guys are doing. We know really truly how transformational this is, so we can't thank all of you enough.
Marianne, could you spell your name while you're up there?
Yep, so Marianne is Marianne, and Kewen is Keuhn. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
All right, I think we'll wrap the press conference. We're going to take a quick photo with all of our speakers. Everyone can- You want to say something, Senator?